as we do have the unpause. Finally, we're going to be starting out here on Village.
Oh, breath of fresh air. There is that 3 tank, 3 support as predicted out of Jupiter. Giant Lynx themselves going to run the same thing, and they actually are quite good at it themselves. Both Giant and Lynx ran a lot of it. CyberGod first casualty, and Giant Lynx just want to try press that advantage. Jupiter, they see what's coming, they see the change in the wind and just back off.
They got time to do so. Point unlocks in about 4 seconds here. CyberGod's already respawned. Jupiter should be able to make it back to contest, but they need to move quick.
Even if they don't, it will only be a little bit of capture percentage before Jupiter in for a fight. Now they start to make the approach, wrap around the side, some early chunks down onto Samurai, but they get into the thick of it, looking to try and isolate Rod Tongue with the stun, but don't quite finish it off. It's just going to be a bit of an earnest brawl.
And this is all going in the favor of Giant Lynx so far in terms of actual progression. Jupiter need to find an opening here. Watch the ult charge because we do have Kemo Hororo really getting himself up there.
Giant Lynx are happy to take this. They're happy to just sit pretty on the point, charge up ultimates, lose no members, nearly got an Earth Shatter available, and the whole time getting percentage on the point. There's the grab. First ultimate out, Bellow, quick casualty. Rod Tongue dies at 99% to a Shatter. That could have been enough to turn it around, but unfortunately, every single ultimate for Giant Lynx came up just shy, and Kenma Hororo led the Graviton charge just enough.
And that's going to be a 6-man team wipe as well. Entirely clean fight by Jupiter, waiting for that first ultimate to come through. And a lot of these 3-3 Goats mirrors, when there is a stalemate, we're waiting for that first ultimate, it's usually going to be quite impactful, and it's usually going to swing the fight.
Now Jupiter, even with just that one ultimate used, have charged up a whole ton. Giant have plenty to go on themselves though, so this is going to be a pretty tense fight. Not too much percentage accrued just yet for Jupiter.
We're looking at Bumbarappa as well because he has the chance to come back here. He's got the grab where Kimohoro doesn't have one. And Jupiter's waiting to see if they can receive it.
Early rally, Shatter goes out from Rod Tongue. They don't get anything for the work, and Samurai to get some connection, but no follow-up. Nice timing on the grab for Bumbarappa. That's going to be largely responded to by CyberGod and Panties as well. Going to use a Transcendent self-destructs. Lay it forward, gets nothing, and now both teams starting to run a little lean on ultimates. It's just Sage and God. Last ultimate to be thrown in the mix, self-destruct forward, finally picked something up, and Kenma Hororo dies. Samurai was isolated as well. That is going to be Giant Lynx coming out the better of it when all is said and done.
You can see the way the ultimates were used there as well. Jupiter expended all 5 reasonably early, didn't get any players off, they couldn't find any trades. Giant Lynx were patient, they didn't lose any members, they still had a couple of ultimates. After the last 2 from Claire and CyberGod will use Giant Lynx cashing those in, finding the kills necessary, and finally flipping that point over. And at a time as well where they can equalize on percentage points, 56 for both teams now.
The second rotation of ultimates is going to be critical, and the same difference is still there. Kenma Hororo still leads Bumbarappa, and that was enough for Jupiter to win earlier. Already muscling Giant back off the point a little bit. That grab nearly available. Now here, throws it against the wall. They need to get the follow-up right in onto Rod Tongue. Absolutely perfect. And Bumbarappa so low he dies to his own right click. Little unfortunate, but them's the breaks. And this was ideal for Jupiter. Again, depriving Giant of finishing those ultimate charges and charging the rest of their own.
And it's like we've come full circle here. We've gone a full cycle, essentially, because at the start of the game, it was Kemo Hororo with that Graviton Surge. No ultimates on the side of Lynx. Once again, it is the exact same situation. And off the back of the Graviton Surge, we have extra ult charge from the rest of Jupiter. Not the full 5 that we saw before, but enough.
Now just barreling straight in. That is a very low Rod Tongue, gonna barely survive. Good for Giant to weather that storm. They're coming close to some very critical ultimates.
It's going to be a very important fight now. 80+% nearing that 90% mark, which means it will be final fight territory, potentially for both teams here. Giant Lynx need to find their opening.
Oh, hugely preemptive Earth Shatter, responded to by Panties, so no casualties yet. Rod Tongue now looking to line up his own Shatter. Gets bumped down to the ground for a moment, a self-destruct layered forward, finds nothing. Grab was there, but they couldn't follow up on it much.
A lot of damage.
Finally, just barely. Just as the grab was about to expire, the self-destruct was no longer a factor. They could turn and address the trapped members of Jupiter. That's going to be a full gong to ring out as Giant Lynx recap.
And this is where if Jupiter could have survived the Graviton Surge, clear 81% to the sound barrier. Kemo Hororo does also have the grab. They have the counter initiation, they have the counter win condition. This is going to be a dire moment for both teams now. Jupiter are sitting at 99, but they themselves are about to head into overtime when they rush into this Giant Lynx defense. Giant Lynx have the defensive ults.
This is where the pendulum swings the other way. Early
Big couple of kills.
Claire and Anakin, and it's already looking rough for Jupiter. This time the grab, the only ultimate they had available again, was not enough. And it was going to be difficult. It was the grab to about 3 ultimates out of Giant Lynx, and well, You do the math. That's going to be Giant LYNX picking up the first map in Nepal.
What you do see here as well is a reasonably slow start from Jupiter right at the beginning of the game. They lose Sabagod, have to go back and lose the cap quite early as well. Lose about 20% in overall progress. 20% behind. If they had managed to get that first fight, didn't lose Sabagod, this might have been a different game. They would have had extra time to play with, more comeback potential, but it really came down to the wire. 99% for both teams and Giant LYNX coming out ahead.
I mean, you got to be impressed for how slick the ultimate rotations were for Jupiter. Giant LYNX actually edging it out in the macro game right at the end is quite impressive, you've got to say. Let's see if Jupiter can now hit back.
It's both teams getting high value off the Graviton Surges. Kemo heroic last time, edging out Bumbarapa ever so slightly, which did make a decent amount of difference. So this time around, watching the ult charge on both the Zarya players, can Ken make the run again?
Both teams again opting for a 3-3. This is often one of the maps that we see some variation, but Jupiter having to stick with it, and rightly so, absolutely barreling down. It looked like Rod Tongue was going to be the first casualty, so a nice wraparound by Anakin to get Rocket first. But at any rate, that's now 3, 4, and now 5 kills. Jupiter very cleanly taking that first fight.
So the timing's amazing as well, because the point just opens up, which means they do get that initial cap. 5 members down, which is a lot of ultimate charge. You can see it's mostly off the back of shutting down Rockton straight away, which exposes a player like Rocket. Suddenly you lose 2 members on Giant LYNX, and then it's a full run over. Jupiter now very far ahead in ult charge.
This is still an opportunity for Giant, though. If they can win a fight before Jupiter finish charging up those ultimates, they're only about halfway to most of them at best. Giant have an opportunity.
This is where Giant, last time around, they had the opening, they had the extra percentage. This time around, they need to find that opening before the first ults come through. And Kemo Hororo leading that charge this time around again, nearing that Graviton Surge.
There's already been a big delay, and Jupiter going to nearly have a grab, if not already have one by the time the fight breaks out in earnest. Giant, they've got to go. Giant LYNX's window has all but vanished now as Ken Mahororo comes up on a grab. Rod Tongue goes down as well, so they don't even end up getting a chance to commit, and that means Jupiter are going to be able to get this wipe, get this fight win, without even needing to use those ultimates they were trying to charge up.
And that is absolutely worst case scenario for Giant LYNX here, because they wanted to get those ultimates out. If they lose because the grab comes through, then they've at least received that grab, they've taken it off the table. But for Jupiter, it's 5 about to be online, 6 and when Claire gets there as well. For Giant, just sitting on 1 so far. It's not going to be a pretty fight this time around, expecting a Giant LYNX fight loss.
It's going to be about as tough as it gets. Saving grace for Giant LYNX is they do have a grab of their own available, and Panties, if he times that right, could absorb more than 1 ultimate out of Jupiter, but it is going to be a tall order as Giant LYNX again make the approach. This time, they cannot afford to dilly-dally.
This is also a point where Jupiter can win this entire game. They can just take this point, take the round as well. Ken's really looking for this grab.
Look to bait out the defense matrix for that first one, and now just waiting for that next approach. Giant LYNX know that that was the play there. It's
90% almost. Giant LYNX is taking far too long now. 6 ultimates available for Jupiter. If they just pull the trigger, they can basically win.
Giant LYNX are waiting for 6 of their own. This is the time for Jupiter to go, and a big messy layer of ultimates in. No one getting the better of that trade. Now Rod Tongue coming up on an Earth Shatter. Sound barrier still available for Claire. Rocket going to commit his now. As Claire's out, Rod Tongue, nothing with the Shatter. Bello rally out, and suddenly all 12 ultimates across both teams have been exhausted. 99% up for Jupiter, and no one is the better. The engage until Bello gets caught, and suddenly Jupiter with a numbers advantage, just looking to press it, drilling down Rocket, now isolating Rod Tongue, looking to finish him off. It's a race between him and Bumbarapa. Not the kind of race you want to be the winner of. That is going to be 100-0 shutout for Jupiter.
And a super quiet round there from Giant LYNX. They just didn't have any momentum to play with. They were behind for that entire engagement, for the entire round. 100-0 suggests that on Jupiter's side, they realistically only played 1 full fight. All 6 ultimates expended in that 1 go. Giant LYNX didn't even have the sort of reset scenario. They didn't have a chance to get these ultimates out of there. I mean, I say that in a way where, to be honest, they could have taken some fights that were a little bit more proactive to get those ultimates out, but the way it ended up falling through, they had 1 fight to speak of.
It was a little bit rough, and I feel like there was an opportunity for Jupiter to actually commit before all 6 ultimates had also come up for Giant LYNX, but all's well that ends well. They still get the win, and now tied up as we come on to Sanctum. Again, both teams sticking to a 3-3, this time with Winston's.
We'll see here if Jupiter can get that early lead again. They lost it on Village, they got it on Shrine. And the early lead means so much for these early Nepal rounds.
Just barreling at one another, and Samurai is the first one to go down. That's good news for Giant LYNX. can press the advantage or could just rotate to the point. They choose to press in.
Jupiter are stuck.
Jupiter, yeah, there's no way back, and it pays off big time for Giant Lynx. I think Jupiter actually half expected Giant Lynx to just rotate to the point. Instead, Giant Lynx get to have their cake and eat it too.
And that's just the kind of the worst place to be caught in if you're Jupiter right there, because they got nowhere to back off to. They can jump off the map if they want to, but at the same time, they are definitely going to lose the team fight. This is probably the worst start that Jupiter have had so far in Nepal, even worse than what we saw in Village.
I mean, at least Village was just one pick and then they had to pull back. This is much worse. Again, Samurai eats a stun and takes too much damage to survive. Rod Tyne getting that far earlier charge on the Primal Rage is causing absolute havoc on the side of Jupiter, who now lose Claire and are in full retreat. Not even going to be able to get back to spawn is Savagod and Anakin. Barely getting out himself.
And where we are at the game so far at this point, we have a spawn camp scenario. Giant Lynx are coming into ultimates. Jupiter nearing their own, but not quite as quick. Just about matching, maybe a little bit behind. It's now 40% for Giant Lynx as well. They have a long ways to go to get a little bit more progress, but they are certainly making their way.
Credit to Claire to actually lead Rocket in ult charge, and they find a catch on Savagod. That's pretty big. Already Jupiter having looked to move in, do not get anything for it, but the saving grace is Giant did burn a couple of ultimates. Jupiter will actually come into the next fight with an ultimate lead.
It's about the biggest advantage that Giant Lynx have had so far in terms of progress lead on the actual point, 62% and counting up. Jupiter still sitting at that 0. On the other maps, Jupiter were further and further ahead. They got 5 ultimates to play with, so you are expecting a bit of magic.
Oh, that's an eaten grab. Ken Mohororo throwing that one out at the wrong time. Now Sunny, a little leader on ultimate. Samurai trying to get in with the Primal Rage. They look to separate, split Giant Lynx in 2, and it is working. Divide and conquer. This is the second half of that. Jupiter just looking to press it in and want to preserve a couple of ultimates to boot. That is decently done, and Ken Mohororo for losing that grab has almost outstripped Bumbarapa in ult charge again.
This is going to be a stagger as well. They can't really
big.
afford this at 90%. Jupiter need to go. Jupiter at a sort of state, sorry, Jupiter actually managed to get that stagger, so Jupiter are going to have a little bit of a better time here, and they do expend a lot of ultimates. Giant Lynx are going to be losing their first fight on Sanctum so far at 93, but they do still hold on to a decent amount of ults to come back with.
Jupiter got a lot of work ahead of them. They are certainly capable. Just looking to fall back for the time being. They don't have a lot of ults to use. Giant only have a couple of their own, but it could be just enough. There's the commit from Rod Tongue, looking to get deep in. That's a good isolation on Ken Mohororo. Saved for the time being, but he needs to get that grab, lickety-split. The self-destruct buys them some more time, and now the grab is available. He has beaten Bumbarapa in that ultimate again, but they've lost Savagod, so close to a Transcendence too. Grab is out, they find Rocket, but they need more. They haven't got it yet. Rod Tongue with his Primal Rage stayed alive. Nice catch on Bello though, and they finish off Saiyajin God's mech. Even without the healers now, Claire being the second casualty, it looks like the damage has been done. They've got enough work in. Giant Lynx have come back in for a moment. Samurai is just going to absorb the damage for now while they wait for Savagod. They need to keep Ken Mohororo alive. Just in the nick of time there.
We're still at one fight territory for Lynx, so they just need to win this one. It's still even. Both sides are getting a lot of kills. Bellows doesn't look like he's going to get a lot done. Straight away, just goes down.
And that is just barely seen Jupiter steering clear. Bit of a late death on Savagod, but actually it's Panties who gets the worst half of that stagger. And now Jupiter nearly matching the, cap percentage. And again, Ken Mohororo beating up Bumbarapa in grab charge.
And this time around, he needs to be able to land it, because last time, because he lost his grab through the defense matrix, they lost the fight up. That Jupiter now in their own one fight territory. If they can win this one, they will take the round. They will take Nepal, but they got to land the grab properly.
They've got just that one ultimate up as well. They have a rally where Bello is a fair way away because of the swap to Doomfist. There's a grab right onto Rod Tongue. They want to isolate him off. He's got a Primal Rage. Self-destruct layered forward to make some space. That catches Claire. He was close to a sound barrier. They really needed that. But a trade back on Panties. Now it's even Stevens as the Primal Rage runs out on Rod Tongue. Sabagod's still got an Orb of Discord as well. Jupiter should be able to melt through the tanks of Giant Lynx, but with that sound barrier, now there's going to be a grab committed on top of Ryu. It's getting rough. Samurai down. Saiyajin God traded back. The Transcendence long since run out for Savagod. We're into one fight territory, arguably for both teams. No one quite the better of it just yet. Ryu nearly at self-destruct. Samurai nearly at Primal Rage. They find Rod Tongue. There it is, the ultimate's coming out, the sound barrier as well to steal and clear. Grab onto Rocket, this could just be it for Jupiter, scraping it back from the bottom of the barrel, 93-0, but they turn it right back around, looking poised to close out Nepal and open up the series 1-0.
And that last fight was so back and forth. Both teams have ultimates coming online. Giant LYNX looked like they were going to take it. They had the grab coming through. They had the sound barriers. They had all the ults. But then when they used them, couldn't quite get the correct amount of kills. Were traded out from Jupiter as well, who themselves then got their own grab and finished things out. But it was a really rough start for Jupiter, all things considered. Very, very slow. Had to wait until 93% before they finally got the recap, and then didn't let go of the point after that.
I don't know how I feel about that, Nepal. A part of me feels like, you know, if you're rooting for Jupiter here, that felt alarmingly close as much as it is a good win. The other part of me wants to take this positively, feel positively about Giant LYNX especially, because the play was actually really slick. It was a lot better than what we've seen out of both Giant and LYNX TH in the past. And we talked about whether or not this would just be a sort of dynamite combo. I think that bodes well, even though they lost.
And the only big problem here is Village, because that was the one for Giant LYNX where it just seemed like nothing was really happening. Sorry, not Village, it was Shrine, where they kind of just a little bit too quiet, didn't take those fights, let Jupiter run away with the game, 100-0, just didn't quite force those ultimates and never got a good fight. Here on Sanctum, though, this, I believe, was that last fight. You can start to see some of those ults coming on through. This was then traded back very quickly by Ryu self-destruct onto Panics.
That was a really tough one as well. Losing Claire, but trading back. I mean, it was just enough, right? At the end of the day, Jupiter survived a lot of ultimates out of Giant LYNX.
And this is exactly the kind of trade that Jupiter was making throughout this entire last phase of the game. You see Samurai D going down here, the grab now coming through from Bumburappa as well. You kind of start to think Giant are going to take this one, but then Saiyajin God gets teammated. Jupiter take another couple of kills. They're also starting to come online now. Kimo Hororo was sitting about 50%, but he's actually about to get 100% off just this one life, off just this one fight.
And it was really huge. I mean, you've got to just credit Ken Mahororo outstripping Bumburappa time and time and time again. We talked about it plenty of times over the course of Nepal. He was leading an ult charge. If I'm not mistaken, he might have even lapped him in that very last one on Sanctum there. I mean, it's just really impressive. We've seen that in the past. When one Zarya is really outcharging the other, it tends to be a difference maker. Even way back on Village, where actually they had the same number of ultimates, but Ken Mahororo was about 20% ahead of Bumburappa at all times. It was very impactful.
And I think it's more so the case that towards the end of that Sanctum, you saw the ultimates were coming online for Giant LYNX at the correct time. They just couldn't quite capitalize on making those kills happen. Whereas on the other side, when the ultimates started to come online towards the end, clear with the sound barrier, keeping everyone alive just long enough for Kimo Hororo to then charge his own Graviton Surge, the game-winning, the game-ending Graviton Surge, when you got to consider he probably shouldn't have been able to live. He probably shouldn't have been able to get that second Graviton Surge. Giant LYNX, if they played their cards correctly, if they got the right trades when they were supposed to, they probably would have finished out Sanctum. This would have been a 2-1 in their favor, and they would have taken Nepal.
The worry in among all that, though, really, it's got to be Shrine. I mean, we can say that, sure, but if that's the case, Shrine shouldn't have been as bad as it looked. But let's bundle that one up, package it up, and move on, because next up is Blizzard World. That means we're going to be moving over to the hybrid game mode. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that works.
Welcome to Eichenwald. This is hybrid. Two teams face off as either defenders or attackers. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to first capture a payload and then escort it along a set path containing 2 checkpoints. To capture the payload, the attackers need to stand within its range for a set amount of time. Defenders can delay capture progress by also standing in range. The attackers must work together to clear away the defenders. If successful, they score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby. To get moving again, the attackers must clear away the defenders by force. If even one attacker is capturing the objective or on the payload when the time runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared away or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
And just like on the first day of competition here in week 1, we are going to go back to Blizzard World for that hybrid map. Jupiter now taking an early lead, 1 so far in this series, but it wasn't the most comfortable win on the poll. They're going to need a little bit more of a convincing win on Blizzard World, but at the same time, I'm starting to believe Giant Lynx have what it takes to bring it back around.
And that's the thing, it doesn't feel like Jupiter are necessarily playing poorly or anything. I would say that they can still perform better. Like, we know how good this team really can be, and I would say they're not quite firing on all cylinders just yet, but on the whole, this is positive signs on the side of Giant Lynx.
Certainly firing on all cylinders so far. Maybe just a couple of short ones, considering how a couple of those rounds on Nepal went, but it's close. It's getting close enough that Jupiter should be sweating. Much like yesterday as well, we are expecting a decent amount of 3-3 being played on this map, but unlike yesterday, we did also see a decent amount of Sombra and other DPS picks. For now though, both Giant Lynx and Jupiter want to stick to the tried and true.
No roster swaps on either side of the fence here. It does seem that these are two teams that are going to favor that 3-3, more so at least than the two teams we saw last night. Now both making their approach to the point here is Giant Lynx.
And in a lot of these neutral fights so far, Jupiter have been able to come out ahead, except for the times that Giant Lynx found that opening kill. Eyes on Sabagar because he was the one going down a couple times early.
Both teams just looking to trade blows back and forth, jostle about a little bit, move forward, give space until someone goes down, and it's Bumbarapa, and that leaves the rest of the tanks bleeding. That means Jupiter can press the advantage, and Giant Lynx cannot retreat quickly enough. It's going to be near a team wipe for Jupiter.
You can see the spacing there for Jupiter as well, waiting for the speed boost from Giant Lynx, receiving that inwards, not losing any members, not having anyone caught out. And then as Giant Lynx themselves are trying to back out, Jupiter find that kill into Bumbarapa. Important that Bumbarapa dies first because Kemahororo picks up a lot of kills and gets himself very highly charged.
This is good signs for Jupiter so far on this defense. This is exactly what you want to be getting in the mirror matchup, and that means Giant Lynx have a bit of work cut out for them. It's going to take them a bit of time unless they're able to get a high impact pick, rather.
And we do have Samurai D with that Earthshatter available. Jupiter looking for this one, they want it.
Quick reactions from Giant Lynx. They pull back. No one takes really any damage at all, and now they can push back themselves.
Oh,
nice catch! Just all filing into that one. Samurai sees the opportunity and slams it down while Rod Tongue had the shield down for just the briefest of moments. That is a full gong in favor of Jupiter.
And that's a bait and switch from Jupiter as well. They speed forward with that shield, with the bubble as well, looking for the Earthshatter. Giant Lynx, they know what's coming. They see that they couldn't find any kills, so Giant Lynx then press forward. Jupiter, as soon as the shield went down, Samurai D finds an opportunity, gets the full shatter, collects the full 6. Jupiter now banking up those other ultimates. Kemahororo with that grab available, and Giant Lynx, Panties, needs to get this Transcendence at the correct time, or it's going to be lights out once more.
Jupiter in a very healthy spot here. Giant Lynx doing the work cut out for them. Again, just looking to barrel forward, press the advantage. One of the advantages as well of not losing the Zarya is you preserve all that charge. We see the damage that Kemahororo does do.
We want to see some patient play from Giant Lynx as well, because they are close to their own ultimates. If they wait just a little bit, get Bumbarapa's own grab, get Rocket maybe up to a sound barrier, Rod Tongue's nearly at that Earthshatter. They can play, they have resources that they can go into.
There it is, grab first, thrown out, self-destruct layered in, thanks to Ryu. It's enough to find Rod Tongue, great timing on the bash, here to turn the shield around, which allowed Anakin to get the bash through onto Rod Tongue, dropping the shield. So now Giant Lynx again in full retreat. Jupiter, they're only going to get the 2 kills for their trouble. That's actually maybe good news for Giant Lynx.
What you do also see here is that Samurai D has another Earthshatter, but because Jupiter have won 2 fights in a row, that's allowing them to cycle into these ultimates. We're now at less than 1 minute, so 3 minutes off the clock for Giant's attack, and they haven't really made any ground just yet. Not a single tick, not a single team fight win.
However, they finally come in with a big ultimate advantage.
Counted.
A bit of an overzealous grab, though, and a great counter Shatter to stop the follow-up, even finding Bombarapa for their trouble. Giant Lynx, they're actually deciding to back off. They've got just enough time to do this one last retreat, and then they have no time left. They just have to fight.
And so far, 2 out of 2 times, Samurai D, when he has the Earth Shatter available, he's finding these opportunities. And for Lynx, they want to go in. They want to find the fight for them. Even with the grab now, 100% shut down once again by the Earth Shatter.
Aside from that grab not being available, Giant Lynx have just about everything else. The only thing they're lacking is the Transcendence. First of all, self-destruct laid in, makes a bit of space, gets them onto the point. They're all stuck in a grab, though. Ken Mahororo is still a powerful tool, but not able to follow up on it thanks to the Shatter from Rodtang. Now, looking to brawl to the point, they finally pick one off. It's Anakin. Ken Mahororo with all that charge, but he's struggling to actually get the damage down this time and get people close enough to dead. Ryu really low here, and finally a 2-tick take so far for Giant Lynx. Might just get the last one here.
Jupiter's in for a last fight. They still do have a Transcendence. Both teams are very much low on these ultimate charges. Ryu, though, gonna go with self-destruct.
Nicely placed. Does force a bit of space. Giant Lynx now having to regroup, using that Transcendence to do so. Jupiter, they have largely recovered here. We are back to a 6 versus 6. Anakin is back with the team. Shatter does not get the connection this time. There's going to be a grab out onto Anakin, only casualty, and it's enough. Counter grab, though, and already low members that just need to be finished off, and that is exactly what Jupiter do. They sweep in, they hammer across the lot of them, and Giant Lynx just barely going to fall short of the mark.
And I'm slowly getting some flashbacks all the way to Shrine here for Giant Lynx, where they just consistently go face first into a brick wall, cannot find the fight, constantly counted out. At least this time around, they were forcing ults out from Jupiter, which didn't happen on Shrine. However, they still just couldn't find the correct fights. Earth Shatters coming out from Samurai D, so on point, even towards the end for Giant Lynx. That final one looked like it was going to be the one to finally cap out. They got 90%, I believe, 90.1 even, so they had the right kind of resources to use towards the end, but because they couldn't get a full team wipe against Jupiter, who were then able to regroup, get back on top of the point, find that Graviton Surge from Ken Mahororo to once again end that game in that fight.
Like you said, flashbacks to Shrine. It feels like a slight lack of initiative in certain junctures. Sometimes it feels like I'm not watching Giant Lynx. I'm watching Giant and Lynx, because that was a problem that both of those teams suffered from.
Do have some slight improvements though, so not all bad news.
I would say major improvements, personally.
90.1% is defendable. It's going to be difficult, but it is going to be something. And for Giant as well, you also did see some signs of life towards the end there, and that final push, the self-destruct entry, does get them an almost team fight win, but they need to transform an almost team fight win into a lot of team fight wins now on this defense. They need to make sure they can survive 4 to 5, win all of them, and force this into a position where Jupiter do not have the time to complete.
Jupiter, on the other hand, goes without saying, they only need to get one good push and it's all over. They will take them up 2-0 in the series.
Also did see there as our Rodtang started on the Sombra briefly, and then quickly changed onto the Ryan again, so he might be slightly late. I believe he might have been scouting or something, but either way, Giant Lynx not quite in position. They're already having to defend directly on the point.
Now fully ferried back. It's a straight 6 versus 6. Slight ult charge lead for Rodtang, and that's really the only difference right now. Both teams just going to jostle about for a while until ultimates become a factor.
Yeah, it's a difficult place to be as well, where we do now see Jupiter wanting to make a bit of a rotation onto the high ground.
Long rotation.
Lynx are going to have to be able to respond here. They're going to go back and all the way around the back of the points, just wanting to flip the sides, where it seems like now Jupiter are basically coming from the defender's perspective.
And this allows Jupiter to occupy some high ground. They're really looking to open up with Ken Mahororo especially. You actually see Bombarapa leading an ult charge. Not something we've seen a whole lot of so far, but that's a good catch. Sergeant God puts him in a world of trouble. They don't quite finish off the mech just yet.
This is still pretty contentious. Both sides working on those ultimates. Samurai D's not too far off. Rodtang's a lot further ahead though, so let's see if he can get that Earth Shatter up.
Ooh, costly charge in. That was actually Samurai that kind of left Anakin out to dry. He made it back to his team, but Anakin not so lucky, and actually off that, Jupiter are going to pull back. And with that really long rotation they made as well, that's a whole minute and a half elapsed for them.
That's the other thing. That's the risk you take when you want to make those kind of moves. Jupiter were already in a position to aggress onto Giant Lynx if they so chose to, but they decided to go all the way around onto the high ground, trying to find a bit of damage, couldn't quite find it, and Giant Lynx are in a very good position to bank up and use these ultimates.
Again, just look at the press board. Giant LYNX have these available. Jupiter nearly have some themselves. There's an opportunity for Giant LYNX, but that is absolutely massive. They sorely needed that grab. Decent Earth Shatter, though, if they could follow it up. Nice save with the sound barrier. Now the Transcendence might not have been quite as necessary, but this is a window for Jupiter to try and press in offensively. Shatter gets nothing, but the grab is good connection. Sound barrier to largely counter it out. Self-destruct, gets 3! And that might just be it. All the ultimates thrown in, none of them getting anything until suddenly one absolutely decimates the side of Giant LYNX. The counter grab, the Bumper Upper died with, finally gets thrown out, but it is all too little, all too late, and Jupiter gonna take out Blizzard World.
And that 90.1% just disappears so quickly for Giant LYNX as well. Jupiter off one really good fight. The second attempt, not the first one, but still good enough to be able to take Blizzard World in a pretty convincing manner. A full hold on to A with a full push onto A to get that 2-0 now in the lead.
Well, feeling very Jovian indeed. I know that word just always reminds me of jovial. That was a bit of a stretch, but 2-0 up, and the second one looking far better than the first. Again, it feels like Giant LYNX are actually playing really, really solidly. They handled that really, really well. It's unfortunate they didn't quite get the right connection on some of the ultimates. The thing that really did it in, though, was actually Bomber Rapid dying. Like, Ryu getting a 3K with the self-destruct, yeah, sure, cool, that's all impressive and what, but LYNX were already heavily on the back foot at that point, just in being in a 5 versus 6. Jupiter were already taking possession of the point. That was more just, it was more just fireworks on top of it all, right? It's conquest and then a banquet afterwards.
You can see the health bars towards the end there. Even if the 3K doesn't come through from the self-destruct, most of the members on the Giant LYNX side were on half HP or even lower, so very difficult for them to reapproach the point, as it was already being capped out by Jupiter, who were basically there standing on top of it, defending it from the defenders, so to speak. You also have a case where the really concerning thing is, despite Giant LYNX's ability to deflect that initial attack and long rotation from Jupiter, when they were actually in the lead, they had the first Earth Shatter, they had the grab earlier, they had most of the ultimates before Jupiter did, but weren't able to really bank them, weren't able to really execute them to get that team fight win, and lost the team fight that you expected them to probably come out ahead in.
Again, it feels like a slight lack of initiative in a lot of ways, and it's a little bit unfortunate. Like, already this team just feels better than its constituent parts. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts here. But there's still some issues that had plagued both LYNX and Giant Esports that are still plaguing this team. I like to think that these are the sort of kinks that can and ideally will be ironed out by this new incarnation of these players. The caliber is clearly there, but right now the lack of it is really costing them. And meanwhile, Jupiter have officially shaken off the rust and are moving from strength to strength.
Yeah, and at a 2-0 lead as well, which means they're now officially at match point. They only need one more map to secure the series. And when we do come back from the break, it is going to be the last 2 maps here to see if Jupiter can do that or if Giant LYNX can make that comeback. We'll see you right after this.